I think there's a certain irony to the success of classic WoW. What was originally pitched as a nostalgic return to form, a kind of museum piece, even, I think it's evolved into something entirely else. This parallel ecosystem, this rival product, and some may consider even a saboteur. Because when you really think about it, classic World of Warcraft didn't just revive old content, it began to reshape the expectations of what World of Warcraft could be, or rather, what it should be. And for retail WoW, that shift has not been entirely kind. Recently, I was talking to a friend about this, someone I've known since the start of the Anniversary Realms, and they said something that caught me off guard. They thought that retail would probably be better if the Anniversary servers, Classic Era, Hardcore, Mists of Pandaria, if none of that existed. Not in a spiteful way, because they play some of those versions of WoW as well, some even with me, just as more of a matter of fact. But it's an idea that has stuck with me because classic WoW, particularly Classic Era, 20th anniversary, for all its charm and intentional limitations, it does exist in some way in direct comparison to retail. Not in terms of player base, but in design choices that retail makes. From gearing systems to the talent trees to dungeon difficulty, it's all judged against this static, idealized past. A past that has been frozen, iterated, and re-released like a sort of nostalgic, neat little package. And the echo that generates just sort of gets louder and louder with each phase, each new classic expansion, each raid tier, each fresh server. Every time Blizzard begins to reissue this old content, we are relitigating what made it good in the first place. And often people conclude that it's better, more meaningful, more social, more real than what we have now in retail. Retail has become the villain in its own story. I think this is the part where I disagreed with my friend because I firmly believe that Classic WoW thrives because of its simplicity. It also thrives because it's not the main product. It isn't asked to be and carry the full weight of the modern player base. It doesn't have to constantly be reinvented to justify a subscription. It doesn't need seasonal content cycles or endless expansions or some kind of rotating battle pass. It just needs to be classic. In a way, classic WoW might be what Nietzsche called his eternal recurrence. It loops forever, the same raids, the same stories, the same rep grinds. And each time we re-enter that willingly, because in that loop there is some strange comfort, familiarity, and in that recurrence we begin to find purpose. On the other hand, I think retail could be that Ubersmensch sprinting off toward the horizon, trying to create new meaning from nothing, and that can be exhausting to watch. We can see the result in how retail has evolved. These borrowed power systems, these sorts of resetting grinds and zone-wide gimmicks. Some expansions have felt like experiments in the last decade, let's say. Always chasing an elusive hit of novelty, while Classic was always simply praised for existing as it was. This feedback loop that exists now is that retail tries to innovate something, good or bad. People will complain that it's not like the WoW they used to know. And Classic simplifies that. Players just say it's not like Classic. Retail perhaps then tries to re-implement a Classic system, and players will then accuse it of being disingenuous. There really is no winning move here. And for the developers, that has to be absolutely maddening. How do you build the future of WoW when the past is permanently pinned to the wall beside it, absolutely glowing with golden nostalgia? It's not that classic is inherently bad for retail. It's that classic has become better at being WoW than retail has. And that is a branding nightmare. When the museum exhibit is more beloved than the flagship products, you have a problem. And we as players have only ourselves to blame for that. We've romanticized the past, not always accurately. Honestly, not accurately at all. We forget the dead servers, these boring grinds, the broken specs. But instead, we hold on and we remember the things like the community, the effort, the social friction, the drama, the meaning. And that really is what it all boils down to, isn't it? Meaning. Retail has more content than ever, but classic still often feels like it means more because it costs more. Not in dollars, well, it certainly can, but in time, in attention, in emotional investment. And I think when you spend that much, you want the game to feel like it's giving you something back. And perhaps that's what my friend meant. Maybe if these classic varieties of World of Warcraft didn't exist, retail WoW could have just moved forward without this ghost of its former self breathing down its neck. But then again, maybe the ghost is what keeps it honest.